right, we'll start.
Wow, I can use this for my pencil case. Finally, I'm done with my pencil case. The plastic bomb will blast. The running water of this river will stop. To a messy. All the eyes will die of breath. It's up to us to make this world a better place. Don't throw it away. Don't throw it away. To single use of plastic, we say don't know. Don't throw it away. Don't throw it away. To single use of plastic, we say don't know. Don't throw it away. We can do better and be the change we want. Let's stop messing and mixing things up. Solutions calling. Tomorrow may not exist. It's up to us to make this world a better place. Don't throw it away. Don't throw it away. To single use of plastic, we say don't know. Don't throw it away. Don't throw it away. To single use of plastic, we say don't know. Don't throw it away.
Things can be better if we work together. We can make a change if we did it all together. So much pollution is causing confusion. We're trying what we can because we need a solution. Look at the bigger picture. Recycling is saving the future. This is more than me and you. We're making the world richer. This earth could be beautiful. There's something we should do. Put the bottles in the machine and what the ocean needs. If we throw this plastic, the result will be drastic. Do the right thing and that will be so fantastic. Don't throw it away. Don't bury the place. We can do better. There are other ways. Everybody, no to disposing and yes to recycling.
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 Come on now.
Don't throw it away. Don't throw it away. To single use of plastic, we say don't know. Don't throw it away. Don't throw it away. To single use of plastic, we say don't know. Don't throw it away. Don't throw it away. Don't throw it away. To single use of plastic, we say don't know. Don't throw it away. Don't throw it away. To single use of plastic, we say don't know. Don't throw it away. Don't throw it.
Why throw away your plastic when you can use them as garden decorations, hanging baskets for plants, piggy banks for your kids, watering containers and sprinklers for your own garden, pencil cases for your kids to take to school, storage for your food at home, and many more. Don't throw it away. To the single use of plastic, we say no.
Don't throw it away. Don't throw it away. To single use of plastic, we say don't know. Don't throw it away. Don't throw it away. To single use of plastic, we say don't know. Don't throw it away. Don't throw it away. Don't throw it away.
Ooh, awesome, awesome. Thank you very much, everyone. We're live today, and I'm welcoming everyone to Independence Day Talk, organized by Great Minds Library and Building Nations Initiative. And the video we just watched was a presentation by the kids at LifePad, which is one of the projects that is organized by Building Nations Initiative. We'll hear a little bit more about that later on. I'm also welcoming our speakers today. I'm so happy that a conversation between two people, actually not just two people, a number of people doing little things here and there to make a change has become this talk today, and we're looking forward to more. So I'm welcoming you all. I'm just going to take it from the people I'm seeing on my screen. So I'm welcoming John Oluwadero. Um, I'm welcoming Eunice Oladeji. I'm welcoming Maximus, also known as Ayatollah Alayande. And I'm welcoming Benga Oni. We'll hear a little bit more about them as we start the conversation. Thank you all for joining today. So here is Independence Day talk, and as the title says, we Nigerians were commemorating the Independence Day today, October 1st. It happened in 1960, but for the last 62 years, every year we always celebrate and talk about, okay, our country, what's going on, the progress, the challenges. Everyone has a role to play. So this year, as we're having a conversation related to a project we're working on, Great Minds and Building Nations, we are working on a project which you'll hear more about later on. We're talking about it, and the idea just came up that, okay, we both focus on education and child development and youth development. And we thought of having a conversation about what do we do about the challenges that we are seeing in the field of education. And it's interesting that there's actually a term called wicked problems that was coined many years ago, actually in 1973, which is problems that do not have um, a single solution. They do not have a single cause. There are a number of criteria that defines what a wicked problem is. And, they don't have a definitive formation. They are conflicting ideas on how to solve the problem. They cannot be studied through trial and error. You just have to try something and it adds up. It's multifactorial. There are a number of things like that. And issues like politics, issues like education, like healthcare, like social justice, like racial reconciliation. A lot of these things are termed wicked problems because there's no one size fits all solution. There's no one cause that we can point to. There's so many factors. And one of it is education, but one other good thing, or let me say one silver lining in wicked problems, is the fact that you can actually pitch in different places. Different levels of change can occur to make a little bit more progress. And we're talking about the state of education in Nigeria, and more specifically, we're looking at, okay, education as a concept. There are many levels of addressing the different challenges with education, especially in Nigeria. We have personal responsibility, we have interpersonal things that could be done. We have the organizational level, the schools, we have the teachers, we have government, we have policy, we have all sorts of levels of that change could occur. But we are focusing today's conversation on Nigerians in diaspora, representing individual Nigerians or groups of individual Nigerians or single organizations. And what is our role? How do we mobilize the diaspora to revitalize education? And we are looking at three areas, which we'll start the conversation with. Small changes. We believe in small changes. Both organizations believe in small changes. We believe in engaging people, engaging individuals, engaging relationships, and engaging people in the diaspora as well. And we also believe those small changes can actually, in the process of developing those programs or initiatives, we can actually learn how do we scale these changes? What are the things that we can do to make sure that it's not just at a level of small change, but it can actually grow to become something that would even influence more people to seek for positive change, and then the results will show for it. So welcoming people from all over. The audience will also be able to participate. We'll put in a link on Facebook and YouTube as well, that you can send in your answers to these 3 questions. If we have enough of time, we might take in 1 or 2 comments from the audience, but if not, we actually plan to compile the notes from this conversation and make it publicly available, that people will not just talk, but we could actually see some of the actionable ideas, and maybe somebody will take that and run with it, or 2 people can collaborate, or 2 organizations can get some ideas and make things happen. So I'll stop talking here and allow our speakers to talk. 3 questions. First thing I'm starting with is small changes. And here's a prompt that I want us to respond to. So after saying this prompt, I want each speaker to tell us a little bit about yourself and then answer the question, and then we'll pass it on to next speaker until we go around our 4 speakers today. So first prompt, what are the examples of small changes that can make a difference in education in Nigeria? So I'm going to pass it on according to my screen. I'm going to start with John Oluwadero. Thank you. You're on mute, so you have to unmute before you start.
Okay, yeah. Thank you so much. It's nice being here, and I'm glad that we can eventually have this kind of conversation because I believe that uh, at the end of the day, we hold ourselves the responsibility of looking at what we can do to contribute towards making the country better, irrespective of what the situation is at the moment. Talking about small changes, I think I want us to first look at when we talk education, what levels of education are we talking about essentially? Because I know when some people saw the flyers, they were thinking as regards maybe ASU strike, tertiary education, and things like that. Yeah, we can have conversations around that as well. But I want to specifically, in terms of the small changes, I want to specifically focus on what young people have been doing as regard primary and secondary education, and also what can be done from policy perspective, right? And example of certain small changes that, in terms of policy, that have been done and has been bringing about meaningful change. So first of all, we've seen. I will give 3 examples. So at the I was opportune to attend the UN Transforming Education Summit about 2 weeks ago, and I met uh, I met the founder of this organization called 1 million teachers, and one of the things they do is that they provide support to teachers in Nigeria on how they can improve. I'm trying to check the name of the, I think Shuaib, I can't remember the name specifically now, but on how they can improve their teaching practices. They provide resources that is needed for teachers to work, and currently they've been able to work in a number of schools in the north. And one lesson that I was able to pick from the conversations I had with the founder, I'm trying to get his name again, is that uh, most of the time we look at teachers when people talk about reforms, we look at teachers as these resources that you can always tweak. We look at them as, oh, something is wrong with the primary and education system. The responsibility, the teachers are the one to be blamed, but we never look at it from the perspective of the resources that they are lacking, and how his name is Akim Shubai. Yeah, Akim Shubai. So we don't look at it from the perspective of the resources that they are lacking and how they can be encouraged to do better. But for an organization like 1 million teachers, one of the things they've been able to do is to provide support to teachers, to offer them digital learning opportunities, to offer them computers and some of the other things that they will need to make their teaching practice more effective. So I think currently the organization has a partnership with HP on providing 250,000 teachers in Nigeria with laptops. Now that is going to make a lot of changes because there was a time that we saw there was a picture that was going around about a school teacher that was using chalk to draw uh, I think computer board, on the blackboard. There is no way students are going to learn about computer education if they are not interacting with computers, right? When their counterparts in other parts of the world are already coding because they have access to when it comes to learning, access to resources is very, very fundamental. So I think one thing that we can do as individuals or as a group of people is to realize the fact that we want to transform education, we want to make meaningful impact in terms of the way our children are learning. We have to work on providing resources, no matter how small, whether it's just resources for GS2 class alone in a secondary school. If that is what you're able to do, that small changes can make meaningful impacts, in the society. Later, I will talk about what we've also been able to do in BNI, as regard using community youth work practice as an approach to promoting education. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for contributing. I'll move on to Eunice Oladeji. And you have 4 minutes to speak on this. Thank you.
All right, it's good to be here. My name is Eunice. Well, Nigerian medical doctor, currently in the US. So, continuing from where John stopped, concerning small changes that we can make, I looked at three things, more like SMS. So the first one would be for the aspirants to share their experiences. There are a lot of YouTube channels and podcasts out there where people who have traveled out share experiences. Most of them talk about application processes, questions you're asked during your visa interview. And I'm sure many of us must have come across those platforms when we were applying to our own schools. However, I'm thinking more in the line of relating our experiences in the educational system in Nigeria to where we are now educationally. Many people have already built a very bad perspective about the Nigerian educational system. Truth is, the system has a lot of issues. However, some of the things we went through and we experienced while in Nigerian schools actually prepared us for what we're doing now. Some of us participated in literary clubs, um, more or less places that prepared us to be able to speak up and present our cases wherever we are. And we came here and saw that that actually works more than you writing pages and pages of things you don't understand. Being able to present your case actually goes a long way. People were able to go for internships or volunteer at different things while in school back in Nigeria, and that has helped them to be able to get opportunities here. So, I believe that the diaspora needs to be able to share more of those experiences, how what they did back in Nigeria has put them a step ahead right now, and how it has also helped them to do better wherever they are. That's the sharing. The next one will be mentorship, whether it be individually or as a group, whether it be one on one or one diaspora to a group of people. Many people do not have proper mentorship in terms of their education. While in secondary school, we're supposed to have like a career counselor who was supposed to help us realize where our strengths were and how to pursue like a better career. But many of us didn't have that. At least my school didn't have a counselor until I was done with school, and that's secondary school. Now, if I had a mentor to properly guide me and tell me, okay, this is where you're good, this is where you might have a bit of some challenges, then I probably would have made better decisions at some point. So we in the diaspora have some experience in, oh, I probably should have done this earlier, I should have taken this path, and instead of going the general direction of you're either going to science or you're going to arts, we have seen that there's a middle ground, and there are even other grounds beyond just science and art. So mentoring young people back home would go a long way in helping our education. Now, the last S would be sponsorship. Education is expensive, and it's not just about money. It's about resources, like John said. Yes, for the teachers, but even for the young people who we are trying to build an educational stamina in. These people, young people, need sponsorship. And while we might not be able to pay the school fees for everybody, we can sponsor them in other things. So where people want to go for internships or externships, people want to go for volunteering experiences where they probably won't get paid. But if there is a community that's providing some kind of sponsorship for that, people will be more encouraged to do it. What about books? What about libraries? So these three things: sharing our experiences as individuals in the diaspora, mentoring other people, either one-on-one, one to a group, whether by ourselves or collaborating with organizations that have access to young people who would need such mentorship, and then sponsoring people in terms of the education. I think these are small changes that the diaspora can work on. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. In case I wasn't clear to our audience, we're actually trying to focus on, our children, primary education, secondary education, the foundation. So that I'm saying that to just clarify, so that we'll be able to send in our comments related to that topic specifically. So thank you so much for using SMS. Very good use of something that we could easily remember and take note of. So I'll pass it along to Ayatollah. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me well?
Yes, loud and clear.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thanks a lot for the opportunity, and sorry for the confusing name tag. I'd put Maximus instead of Ayatollah. Thank you so much to Mr. John and the team for the opportunity to be talking here. I'd say a brief caveat to what I want to say, though. I prepared in my mind that this was going to be sort of higher education related, but it's okay. I think some of the ideas are still very much transferable. I think one key thing I have in my mind is to think about it from a personal perspective, which is to provide incentives for people to return back home. Now, it doesn't really sound quite popular. It's quite an unpopular opinion, because when you tell people that one of the ways to resolve the education crisis is to give yourself in, it sounds crazy, because like, how many people would be able to do that realistically? But what I mean is not necessarily for you to pack your loads. If you're in the US, pack your loads and go back to Nigeria. If you're in the UK, pack your loads and do that. But we're seeing small ways in which you could actually do that by proxy. So I'll give examples, not to repeat what every other person has said, right? John was talking about providing resources. I believe there are several ways to provide resources. It's not just money. The obvious thing is that as people in diaspora, we can always send money back home. We can always pay a child's school fees. We can always, to use the example of what happened in UCH recently, we saw someone, just a single person, donating $1 million, right? So at the basic education level, we can always do that as well. But there are some things that we can do that are actually not cost intensive. Think about an exchange program, right? An exchange program that actually doesn't require young kids to actually travel, say to the UK or say to any other, country that people so much desire. And it still gives them the same learning experience. This is the digital age, right? You could think about as someone in diaspora, these are things you could actually do, be able to reach out to a community school to say, hey, could we get kids from this social secondary school in Nigeria to just shadow your, IT day or your open, whatever program you're having for your kids on one of these days, and they could join in on Zoom. Those things are actually easier to come by here. I work with a couple of volunteer-based organizations here. So, and you see that when it comes to school outreaches, they are usually very open to it, because one way to make kids develop their minds is to expose them to as much information as possible. Obviously, very positive information. So, one thing we could think about it not in terms of cost first, but in terms of what is the most creative way to get these kids to see more than they are seeing? Obviously, the challenge of education in Nigeria is not just limited to what kids learn. There's an infrastructure problem. We know that, which we probably can't even solve, even if we put in our all as people in the diaspora, right? So that's sort of a government intensive area of problem, a very wicked one at that. But I think there are things we can do. Exchange programs is one thing that comes to my mind, but also in terms of, I think I didn't touch well on giving yourself back, going back home and actually doing something. The example I had prepared in my mind, sorry, unfortunately, it doesn't quite apply well, but again, I'll try to wing it. I was talking to someone a few weeks ago, and we're talking about this particular person who had, very brilliant young man, had his undergrad education in the US, up till doing a PhD in Oxford, and then he decided to actually go back to Nigeria to do his postdoc. Now, certainly for someone with a PhD in Oxford and an undergrad from a very well-respected school in the US, getting a postdoc is the least of his problems in any of these other countries. But he actually wanted to do it in Unilag. And, it didn't make sense to me. He's sort of like a senior friend. And I was like, why? And after the postdoc, he decided to actually stay in a research institution in Nigeria. Maybe you could make a case for, wanting to explore new ideas, but I don't think that was what was driving him. What was driving him essentially was to say, hey, you cannot keep complaining that the system isn't working when you stand aloof. Obviously, you are not the Messiah, right? But the fact that you're not the Messiah doesn't mean you shouldn't contribute to anything when you have the chance. So what I'm essentially saying is that we could give ourselves in as well, even at the primary and basic education level. When you have the chance to teach. It's quite funny. I remember so I've been out of Nigeria for just about 3 years, but I remember going home on one of those occasions and actually teaching in a small church program for kids, like what do you call those programs? These small lessons you organize. Yeah, they make an impact on kids' lives. And even growing up as a kid, you will remember some of the people that motivated you were those kind of small instances, right? Of course, there are broader structural problems, which we might discuss when we get to that area. But in terms of small changes, so I'll say, first of all, provide resources. Don't think money when you think resources. Obviously, where you can put money, put in money, but think of creativity, right? Exchange programs, I've talked about that. Also give yourself in, that's the right word. Provide incentives for others like you to want to return home from what they see you do. Yeah.
Thank you very much for sharing about giving yourself go back to Nigeria by proxy. If you can go back to Nigeria physically. Yeah, which makes a lot of sense. There are lots of examples of people actually sharing of themselves, or maybe creating an organization that they might not be physically present, but partnering with people in Nigeria to give kids an opportunity, that exposure, the knowledge, and creativity. You mentioned that. Thanks so much for sharing. I'm taking notes so we can put these things together as well. So if you hear or see me typing or focusing on the second screen, I'm also taking notes. So thank you. I'll pass it to Benga.
I don't know if it's from my end, but I've been hearing a lot of feedback. I hardly hear what almost all of you were saying. Yeah, but my name is Benga Isaac Oni. So in this particular time of my life, I attempt to identify myself as someone that's passionate about servant leadership, steward leadership, which is generally different from servant leadership or any other kind of leadership that we have. So I love all of the contributions from John, Eunice to Maximus, but I have a big challenge with all of those contributions. We're looking at education at a formal way. So I think we need to have a better definition of what even is education in its first place, because even people don't even have to go to the four corner of the school to begin to have educations that transform their life. So I want to base my conversation based on what Paulo Freire work did in terms of critical theory. And so when we're looking about that, it's all about education is supposed to be meant about transforming people's life. So people don't have to go to the four corner of school to get their life transformed. So we begin to, I think it's the time we need to get to the point that first, let's define what is education. And so because the big trouble we have is, it starts from, I love what you were talking about, Tolu, you were talking about the wicked trouble, which is one of the big theory that was developed in Harvard. But also it links to 1970 that we're talking about, but there's a program in Harvard called Building State Capacity, and which covers the PDIA, and it talks about a lot of big things. So education in Nigeria, it's not just a wicked trouble, but it's also has been caught in both policy, this, because I know you say, oh, we should not talk about policy, but policy has its own big problem. It's all about how is Nigeria defining education. Because when Nigeria defines education, they're all thinking about university. And then if ASU is not functioning, every other pin. So the time we try to separate all of these things in, I think 1993 or in 1990, when we have Superb, which we say we have more fun to primary schools, all of these things. But they're not working because we have not really defined what do we mean is education. Education is whatever people can do to transform their life that can make them become more contributors to their society. So I don't have to be a doctor. I don't have to be an engineer. I don't have to be a barrister. I don't have to be a lawyer or whatever it is. But we're creating a system that even from primary school, we're already preparing people's children's mind towards just looking at those three big things everybody wants to go into. Sometimes I even see foundation. Now you're beginning to say, oh, do a red course that will help you in the future. Become coding, become all of this. So it starts from that foundation. But having said that, let's come back to how can the diaspora help. And so I think one of the things is that everybody go to your community, look for people. Don't, sometimes we'll be talking about this. There's a research talked about the money people send in every year to the village. People just take the money for burial, for food, for wedding, and they waste it. So why not decide that this time around, I'm sending my money to a particular primary school to sponsor a teacher or to support a teacher or to look for a foundation working. Because there are a lot of foundations in Nigeria that are doing a lot of good work. Teach for Africa, all of those other people doing great work. BNI itself is doing a great work. So I'm not speaking as BNI advocate, but it's doing a lot of work, having all of these summer programs for kids. Like some of the kids we watch in this video, they're young. So how do we begin to support them? Send money specifically and say, I am sending money to BNI. I'm sending money to this foundation. So not just sending money every year for Christmas party and for all of those things. And that's how diasporas can make meaningful change. I know you also talked about that we should think about primary school and this, but I think all of us graduated from one university or the other in Nigeria. One of the things that drive all of this, all of us that have schooled in the US or in the UK, or we even get funding scholarship doing there. This money sometimes come from alumni that graduated from those schools. But we go there, we benefit from it, we make all of the money. We don't remember our universities back at home. But I know we say, oh, there's corruption, you put the money there, you do that. But you can come specifically and target one project, one specific thing and build. All of the building in the UK universities, in the US universities, were built by people, not the government, sometimes not the school. And so they endow those buildings. But we had the time that somebody from Nigeria in Borno State went to the US and built 2 hostels, while the person has never gone to visit the IDP camp in Borno. So you see, we need to change our priority as a people. Sorry, I'm sounding angry as an activist, but I'm just angry tonight in terms of it's our Independent Day, and as a country, 62 years, we don't even know where we are going to. We don't know what we are doing. And so I think we need to redefine what is education. Don't think about formal education alone. China is where China is today because China went beyond just having certificates. Sorry to say that we are so proud in Nigeria to count the number of certificates we have and all of that. But what is going on there? We need to begin to take creative way that I don't have to go to school to become creative, to produce things. I can learn it from vocational centers. I can begin to learn children begin to learn. How do you learn mathematics? Okay, you see, schools that were built in the US and in the UK, the people that designed it knew what they were doing. There were no fences around school. So when you learn anything in class, when you're walking back to your hostel, you are seeing practical things. What you've learned, how it's been translated. So it shows again, we need to be logical in terms of how we're structuring that. So diaspora, so my call is send money to your village. Look for a primary school there. Sponsor, do some things. Children sit on the floor. Is that what we want to be talking about? No, people are still sitting in the floor in 2022. And so that's what we can do. Look for our schools. Even secondary school. I know I'm in the secondary school alumni page. And sometimes I removed myself last week. They added me back again because they don't discuss anything meaningful there. Let's do what are we going to do to help our school? You see, they then bring different arguments, politics, rubbish, what is trending in society. So, our mindset needs to change. And so once we belong to this group, let's begin to ask, what can we do collectively as a group to do that? I know people are trending Bobby, but Bobby is not the only person that graduated from that primary school that went to renovate the school and give them things. Those are the kind of things we need to see. Because people see celebrities, see people do all of those things. You don't even have to be a celebrity. You don't want to, because sometimes when people build one primary school or one block or one chair, they'll bring CNN to cover it so that everybody will see. But we need to begin to transform. So I was in Malawi some couple of weeks, last week. So I was just meditating. So what am I going to do in Malawi before I leave? My spirit just led me that I should visit an orphanage. So I told my driver that was working with me, take me to any orphanage, let's go. But I'm sharing this story. There's a story behind it, but that's where I'm headed to. So he took me to an orphanage called Jacaranda. So when I got there, I just look at the orphanage and say, you brought me to these people. They have plenty money. I need people that don't have plenty money. Not this kind of, but he said I should wait. But when the woman came out, I was shocked that she won CNN Award of the Year some couple of years ago. She was a nanny in the United States. She was sending money to her mom, and they were taking care of orphans in Blantyre, orphans that were orphaned by HIV and AIDS. So when she works as a nanny in LA, send the money back to Malawi, and the mom, in just one single room, the mom started that orphanage and school. They were taking care of kids, but before you know what happened, it grew to become lovely, and she doesn't get any government funding. It's people's voluntary will and all of that. And I said, okay, yes, I know why God has sent me, and I know that every summer I must have to come to that place to teach the kids. And so that is one of the things. So people come and volunteer there and teach and all of that. Just single human being sacrifice a lot and do that. After that CNN award, nobody talks about her again, but she's still running that place. Those are the kind of things we can do. How do we build all of this? I want us to please begin to, as I round up, to identify what are some of the things you can do beyond just, people might not hear about you. There's all orphans around us, their children, and you can build, what do you call it? You can build schools for them. They don't have to go to formal schools. And those kids now, in some way, they are winning a lot of awards now. Some of them are they've done A levels, they have won master's class scholarship as orphans from that school. That orphanage school, not a public school that volunteer teachers come to teach them. They are in schools in the UK. They are in African Leadership University in Mauritius and Rwanda. And so those are meaningful things that should stay us, that we can see. Then Nigeria, will come back when we begin to talk about more. I will give you a lot of examples in Nigeria of things that are existing that is not in the radar.
Wow, thank you.
Sorry, excuse me. I just want to chip in a little to some of the things that said, just a little. I'm currently taking a course on American education history, and there's something I realized that, okay, we all know that it was the missionaries that brought education to Nigeria, and one of the things I realized was, as at the point, okay, that course took like a 250 years journey of the American education, and as at the point Americans were bringing in their education, into Nigeria during the missionary era, slavery era, and all of that, and the time that slavery ended and the missionary handed over the school back, I noticed that education reforms, stopped there in Nigeria. So it was when, okay, so for them in America, they continued with various reforms and conversation about improved education. But what they handed over to us, that was what we continued with, where they were reforming theirs. For example, it was during the course of this, of reading that book, that I realized that there is a difference between high school, comprehensive school, grammar school, and all of that. And one thing that was so shocking to me that I observed was, America had been talking about universal public education way back since 1867, whereas Nigeria passed the Universal Education Bill in 2004. Now, what do I want to bring about that is, my lesson from that is this: there is a way we expect a democracy of 62 years to compete with a democracy of over 250 years, without not even looking at the commitment of the citizens of this country to bringing their education, right, to where it is now, that everybody is coming here to want to study and all of that. So I also look at the influence the church played, communities played, in mobilizing resources within their community to start education. If you look at areas like Massachusetts and Boston, the way education started in those places, where communities were kind of starting schools, in their house, people donating buildings and all of that. So we can't excuse ourselves from the place of responsibility. The fact that the missionary brought the education to us and showed us that education is something you give, right? It's not something that, do we understand that concept? The fact that we've always seen education as something they give us. Parent has always, or there's a way we think and separate ourselves from that responsibility of we providing the resources, communities coming together to provide the resources that is needed to grow education. Even if you look at the way education grew during the era of missionaries, my dad was a missionary, you will see that even during the era of churches starting schools, you see individuals giving the land where the school was built, the land where the church was built was given by individuals. When they want to build this building, communities come together, they volunteer their human power, in some volunteer as maybe carpenter or as bricklayer and all of that to build the school and all of that. But at this point, we've totally shifted it to be that it's the responsibility of the government. No problem, actually it is. But the point is, in situation where government is not performing, do we wait and let the kids, be suffering and things be the way it is and say, oh, government? We can't wait, right? So that brings us to the place of uh, structuring our commitments. Let me put it that way. It's not that most Nigerians do not have passion to want to change things. It's not that maybe we don't feel all this concern. I think the challenge, most importantly, is the fact that we've not structured the way we channel our help. And two, we've not also looked at ways that some of these supports, ways whereby we could use the available institutional platforms in the community, churches, youth groups, things that exist in the society as a trustworthy platform. I use the word trustworthy because the reason sometimes people don't want to do projects with some of these platforms also that the place of trustworthiness, right? So those platforms has to be enhanced. The program went for Sanusi was talking. I raised a point with Sanusi about the fact that we've when we talk education, there's so much attention on formal education. We've not looked at it from non-formal education and how informal platforms like churches, mosques, and things like that could be used as a venue to deliver learning. It may not necessarily be during, I mean, if there to be a community whereby they have schools, but there's no summer program. What is wrong with the church running a summer program on coding? What's wrong with it? Okay, if a church in a village cannot afford coding to run a coding summer school, but they could afford to run a summer school, probably that focus on gardening. Many churches have instruments. They have instruments, they have drum sets, they have keyboards there. Most churches in Nigeria, as we speak, can run summer program on music. 50% of the churches in Nigeria right now can run summer program on music, right? So we need to begin to look at how do we begin to harness the existing resources in the society, right, to provide education even at the community level in a very informal way, such that at the end of the day, people are able to get access to education and the skills they need to thrive. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Tolu, please. Yeah, Tolu, I think you just said a lot of things. They are great, but I don't want us to excuse the government because if you leave it at that point, we've got to the point. We say, oh, don't blame the government. The government, see, that's why we have a government. Because government needs to bring those this because I understand, yes, we need to do things, but we are beginning to come to a point that we're excusing a failed government. They say, hey, don't blame government, don't blame government. It's like even that this trust that you're talking about, right? People, if we have government are there to also check those balance that if they have right regulatory framework, it can help people to correct, because we have a lot of NGOs that are not supposed to be NGOs, right? They just use it as the money forming channel of that. But I agree with everything you said in terms of all of this. But I just want that, yes, we're saying as a people we should come out to do things, but I don't want us to also excuse governance, because governance has a big play. Policy plays also a big part to it, because if you build all of these beautiful things and there's no security, there's nothing, they all go into shambles. So government must wake up as we begin to think of election for next year. I just wanted to raise that because somebody might be listening to us, and if there's a politician that by chance that hears us, we're not excusing you as politicians. You need to change. You need to repent after 62 years.
I also feel one of the ways we could hold government accountable is when these platforms or when this platform in the society also comes together to do a joint project like this. They need to, by reason of what they are doing, hold government accountable. For example, we've provided land. So what's the excuse? Come and build school. Okay, we've made blocks. Okay, come and do this. So there is a way through the work that our committees are also doing. They could also hold government accountable and draw their interest in what is going on in their community.
Yes. So yes, I agree, and I think it's worth noting that a lot of the things we see in some of the countries that we've traveled to, the structure that enables individuals to do things is provided by the government. And also, like John said, a lot of organizations are also doing advocacy. They are lobbying, they are making sure that the people that are elected are doing the things that are aligned. But I think that there's a disconnect between that, maybe the individual or organizational level and the government, such that they don't have any sway or control or able to lobby for things that would improve the condition of education as well.
I think just to bring some sense of practicality to that, it's interesting to see like what Mr. Gbenga had in mind, and what John had just elaborated on was one of my talking points. So I thought about this idea of us sending money home, and like in the broader sense of things, every Nigerian who is passionate about education wants to send money home, wants to do something, financially. But the problem is that it's unstructured. And now you just mentioned, that disconnect between government and, and people sending money home. Now, how do we ensure that the money that is being sent, or let's just put it that way, the kind of support that is coming from the diaspora, is actually reaching where it's supposed to reach? When I mean reaching where it's supposed to reach, actually achieving what it's supposed to do. Because you could actually build like 2 or 3 blocks of classroom. There are no students there. I used to work at JA. These problems are multifaceted. And especially when you think of education outside the box of mathematics, English, and every other thing. In JA, then we used to do entrepreneurship education. And what you find out actually is that even the government, right, is interested in doing these things for optics, to bring all the kids together, bring people from Google to give a talk and take pictures to say, Oyo State partnered with these people to do entrepreneurship education. Meanwhile, there are people actually from the diaspora who have real content, solid work to do, a very structured way to actually engage these kids and give them hands-on experience. But they're unable to do that. I was working. Sorry, this is public, but I was working there when it was I think it was Governor Ajimobi's time then. And you go to the commissioners for education and all those things. They'll say, we don't want you people. You just want to. There's a trust that is broken. You just want to take our money. And then, much of these funds is coming from abroad. People, Nigerians like me and you, who have private corporations abroad who have been able to make money. So how do we ensure that we build that connection between private individual efforts, and actually NGOs on the ground who are, I would say who are the runners of the initiatives, right? And then the receivers, so to say, government on that side, or the critical stakeholders that make, implementation happen. How do we so this is not a question for me, it's a question for everybody that's talked about this. How do we bring that together? Private individual efforts, the structure that is on the ground. We need to make sure those are actually getting to the right places.
Wow, awesome. So this conversation is meant to be less than an hour. I think if we all can see it the same way I'm thinking, question 2 actually talks about how do we structure diaspora engagement towards scaling these small changes, and we've started talking about that. So I'll just say, do we have more ideas on this particular issue now to just share as well before we move to the last question?
Okay, so talking about the question Maximus asked about how to put in the structure for the engagement between, I would say, community, the not-profits, or let me say the NGOs, the local NGOs, the traditional community structure, right? The local NGOs, the governments, right? So the traditional community structure, I'll talk, including religious, traditional, market women, whatever structure, they to have kids that go to school, the market women. There is a part of the local NGO, BNI, One African Child, GA, we might not call GA local, but at least all of those structures, right? Then the government. Now, we all know that in each community, there is, what do they call them now? Counselor, Abi? There's counselor.
You mean in the schools, right?
No.
Local, politically, counselors, counselors in the ward,
the ward level, right? We also have local government chairman. We have all of these things. I think the weakness of this local government structure, I think is one of the reasons causing all of these, the lack of effectiveness of implementation of project at the grassroots. Because normally, if a community is to do a project, and maybe the progressive union of the community, the township union of the community comes together that we want to work on our secondary school, they don't have teachers. For them to have teachers, they need to have accommodation for teachers. That was one thing we discovered when we were doing a project with Aku for community. Most of the teachers that were posted there don't stay. They transfer back because there is no good accommodation, there is no light and all of that. So if a community wants to build more like an hostel for the teachers, and they want to mobilize resources, and they want to get government engaged, it should be the responsibility. There is a way the community should hold the ward person accountable to say, see, we voted you, Queen, or the local government, or whosoever it is that is in government in that community. That person is supposed to be the mouthpiece, that help them push their matter with the government. And I think local NGOs needs to be able to identify those kind of key stakeholders in the community be able to develop a strategy, a multi-stakeholder partnership between the community, the government person, and the government person, whosoever is going to be their contact person with the government, and create a working relationship between these three levels of stakeholders. When such structure is stable, and diaspora can see that, okay, there's someone in the government that is also helping us push. Community people can see that, okay, we have people abroad that can also support. The local NGO, the responsibility then will now be facilitation of all of these processes, how things relate and all of that. I think that might be something that might work. I don't know.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
like Eunice to speak quickly because she has some things to say before I move back to us. Yeah. So Eunice, please.
All right, yes, thank you. So I'll just speak to the question about structuring ourselves in the diaspora. I'll use an example with the school I'm at right now. We are coming together to form a Nigerian Students Association in the school. Primarily, it's to help those of us already in the school, but it's a structure or a platform that can be projected to helping people back home. And I think that while individual efforts are good, I think when there's a cooperative group of people with the same mindset, we're able to achieve better. It's more or less just leveraging the power of cooperative people who are moving in the same direction. So the diaspora is like a very wide group of people. However, if we can bring ourselves together into small chapters, small communities, so whether it's based on schools where you went to or based on the area you currently live in, we can find a way of bringing ourselves together and then working along with other chapters back home. So we know about alumni associations back home. We know about student associations back home. For me, for example, I went to the University of Ibadan. I went to the College of Medicine. There's the University of Ibadan Medical Students Association. How can I work with that association to help other medical students? Beyond medical students, how can I go to secondary schools and speak to people there who are at that crossroad where they need to make decisions of what to do next with their lives? How about going to primary school? So I think this thing is, yes, the government has a very huge role to play, but sometimes it's not easy getting the government on track. If you try to wait for the government to help or to get on the same platform with you, there's going to be a lot of time wasted. But if we can work with ourselves, a student association here, an alumni association here, working with another student or alumni association back home, I think that's a two-way channel that's more reliable than waiting for an extra channel from the government. If the government wants to then get involved, all well and good, they're welcome. But for a long time, we've all been watching the government decide to act when they want to and to what extent they want. Imagine starting something with a present administration, and then when that person leaves, the next administration is not willing to continue with it, then there'll be a problem. But a student association that has committed to helping out in a certain way, no matter what happens to the current president of the association, the next person will still want to continue because it's a common direction they're all going to. So that's one thing I feel that we need to structure ourselves around. Form communities or chapters here that identify with another community or chapter there. It might not, the student association back home in Nigeria might not even be where you finished from. You can just go through a list of the associations or the schools in Nigeria where you've identified a certain need. And I know we've not gone to the next question yet, but because I have to leave soon, I'll just go to what I was coming to talk about for the scalable models. Adopting entities. If we have a group of diasporans who adopt an entity. And now, in adopting an entity, it can be a school, it can be an educational center that's not necessarily a formal school. It can be an organization. We've mentioned NGOs that are working in the line of making education better in Nigeria. Adopt that organization, adopt the school, adopt the educational center. Start with their immediate needs. That's something we need to also be careful about from the diaspora perspective. We sometimes think we know what they need, and then we pull resources together and do this huge thing. Meanwhile, that's not what the entity needs. When we have the structure from our end, we can then speak with this adopted entity right now in a 3-month goal, 6 months goal, a year. What are those things you need education wise that we can attend to? And then we put our resources to attend to that particular thing for that particular entity. And then we watch, how does this affect education? What improvements can we see? Let's evaluate how that works for that particular entity. Now, when we're done addressing their immediate needs, then we can do extra. Oh, so we've attended to this particular need you need. Now we think that if we add this other thing, it will make education better. Then we do that. Now, when we're done with a particular entity to a certain extent, and we see that we are actually getting the outcomes we had in mind, we can move on to another entity. So we might not be able to get through the whole of Nigeria at once, but if the diaspora community, say an alumni community in Chicago, adopts an NGO in Ibadan, and they work together for a year or two, there is a lot they can achieve in that time period. And when they think that, oh, we've done something to an extent, they can move on to another school, say in Abeokuta, just touching different entities that have to do with education on small scales, because in a year or two, you might not be able to do so much. But if you're attending to the immediate need of that school, a school that doesn't have seats, give them seats. A school that doesn't have a school bus, get them a school bus. An entrepreneurial center that needs a new place to set up their business. I know of this company called Sheda House. It's a place for creatives, photography, web design, coding. People, young people go there and they are really taught beyond what happens in whatever school they are in. Many of these children have gone on to like develop themselves beyond even what they're learning in the four walls of a school. Now, if you adopt that entity, you're addressing whatever they need at that time. And then when you're done taking care of them to a certain level, you can move on to just about any other entity. And the good thing about using this kind of structure is that when you're working with one entity, you are also able to see another entity that's either related to that one or has similar objectives in terms of education. So these are like small things that we can do to, I think the very first thing is to get the diasporans into an organized structure ourselves. Because I'm meeting you guys for the first time, and I don't think I'm not sure if we'll meet beyond this platform. But there are other Nigerians around me that I can gather together and do something. Person in the UK, the person in South Africa, have other Nigerians around them that you can spur into this commitment and then do something great from there. I'm so glad I came here. I hope that our listeners on Facebook, YouTube have gathered one information or the other, or have been inspired to do something for our country, Nigeria, in terms of education. Happy independence, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Eunice. Yeah. Thanks for your input. I think um, we're releasing you so you can go. We are out of time, but I feel like there might be a few more things to talk about. Do we all agree? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So, three things that I think might be related to our third question, which is how do we, second question talking about diaspora, structuring diaspora engagement. Third thing talking about how do we build scalable changes. I think one question that I have always had that can actually help us, to maybe talk about this a little bit more is about when an organization here, maybe for example, partners with an organization in Nigeria, or when somebody does something in Nigeria, how do we ensure sustainability of that initiative? In the sense that a lot of times people come to do stuff as a programmatic thing, as a project thing, but how do we make it such that it's actually something that you build it into the existing structure of that organization or that community and empower them to be able to continue that. A lot of projects I'm involved in the US here, there's always something about what is the sustainable. How do you make sure that after you've gone, how do they continue to do that? The second thing is that how do we begin to talk about maybe advocacy and policy, like was mentioned there? How do we need to start incorporating an advocacy component in all our organizations, such that as we are doing stuff, we're actually doing research, we're actually connecting with leaders, we're actually having conversations that, okay, come and join us in this thing. We need to introduce this thing into policy. Do we even have that ability to do that? How do we play the long game in change? So,
Right. Can I jump in? I don't know if I'll just jump in at the first one. I think not to fling it too far, right? The first one I think we've already touched on it, which is making things sustainable. And I like John's example of working with local communities, because the truth is that in most cases there is a sense in which people want to do projects to be able to attribute a name to it. Nigerian Association of Abroadians in America, that's what you want it to be on the project. But what's more important is actually the community that is able to take it further, the BNIs, I don't know of any other examples, sorry, the JAs and many of these other NGOs. Because the point is, look, the reason you're coming in as a diaspora is because you have more capabilities. It could be resources, it could be network, it could be that you have more exposure. But if you think about it in terms of those who are actually able to effect real change, let's be candid with ourselves. The people on the ground understand the situation more. Can we give direction? Definitely. Can we give resources? Definitely. But in terms of sustainability and keeping the project on, I think it's very important to think about partnering with local NGOs and communities. But of course, it's also very important to build a structure around it. I'll give another example. I think there's an NGO I know like that operates in Lagos. So this person who lives in the UK actually has about 2 staff who actually run the NGO from Nigeria. Apart from the fact that she outsources the operations in a way, she still has people who are in the UK who kind of work with her. So it's not going to be a total hands-off. So if these guys who are in Nigeria who are supposed to be outsourcers get to be ineffective in a way, which does happen, we know some NGOs sometimes NGO is not the panacea. Local community leaders are not the panacea. They also, they get into some errors. But she has people who actually work with her in operations. So I think a sense of creativity has to come in. But the basis is that we need to engage local community. Secondly, in terms of policy and advocacy, because I know my seniors want to add some other things. I think it's very well possible to do that. It's very well possible. It could be very minor. It could be at the most basic level. So again, I'll give practical example. So I remember then, and to be honest, some governments are more receptive than the others. That's the truth. But the beauty of primary and secondary education in Nigeria is that it's not controlled at the national level, right? It's within the ambit of the state. So one way we could do is actually to be able to reach out within our network as well. I know Lagos State recently, they approved entrepreneurship as part of, even if it's not called that, but at least every public school in Lagos State, when I used to work with Jay, I think it's either Wednesday or Friday, you need to have a time slot into the timetable to learn something, whether it's entrepreneurship or sports. I think not even sport, apart from sport. I think this was entrepreneurship or IT. And every school had to implement that. And so for us as NGOs, when we go into the fields and we find out that some schools are actually not implementing it, those get brought to I think usually the attention of the special advisor who actually oversees those kind of things, different from the commissioner. So the commissioner is more related to teacher training, principal, those bigger ones. But if you think curricular implementation and extracurricular activities, partnership and stuff, those things usually go to the special advisor. So it's very much possible. I've seen it happen, even without being in diaspora, let alone talk about people in diaspora who do have, solid networks. I know people being able to reach out to a special advisor in a state is not a problem for many people. So I think that's possible. I think it's doable. These are things you have to be deliberate about. If you want to introduce coding in a school, I know Ekiti State is actually doing some very innovative things. So I was speaking to my friend the other day. So if you want to introduce these things, there are people you can speak to who by the call or a letter get it done. But maybe I'm sounding too idealistic, but I think those are my examples. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much,
Maxwell. So I think the issue is the question you've dropped, right? They are just like guided, because every response that people has given has covered most of those questions. But first, in terms of just addressing some of the questions you talked directly, I saw somebody posted in the that leave government. I'm sorry to shock you. We're not going to leave government. I've been in this game for over 20 something years, so I know what I'm talking based on fact and figure and all of that. If you leave government out of it, all of these beautiful things we've said here would not work.
Yeah.
So sorry to you. So my wife runs the foundation. So we see it as a family foundation. We'll use our personal money to do it for Steering for Greatness. She's been doing a lot of progress in Lagos. Even Lagos is like a unique and excellent place due to the fact that we even have like an indirect connection to the commissioner and all of that. So they do entrepreneurship in schools. So they get permission, even after permission that the commissioner has given permission, permanent secretary has given permission, they went to the district. They're supposed to work with 12 schools, but at the end of the day, 3 schools do not agree. They bring different rules. Oh, can you put light in our generator? Can you bring this? Can you bring that? So sometimes the system itself is broken. There are people that wants to work. So what we're saying is that we're not blaming government, because who is government? That's the first thing I wanted us to define. We are government. You are government, I am government. And I love what John said, because if we don't understand where they were also government, we cannot hold people accountable. And so one of the reasons is, I think, is a mindset shift. So Tolu, one of the small scalable change, for me, I don't believe in models. Like, and I love when you talk about the issue of wicked problem. Wicked problem is saying that there's no one particular model that works.
Yeah.
And there's a different work. And then I did a research, which I think I was expecting John to talk about it, about how these uniform voluntary organizations can also play a huge impact in bringing this scalable change. And so what Eunice was saying before, the truth is that even diaspora themselves are not organized. Let's tell ourselves the big truth. We don't even know, they don't know themselves. I've lived in the US. I've had the opportunity to live in different places, and I still go to the US frequently as possible. So I understand everybody works different, everybody has different goals. And what Maxime was talking about, I love it. Everybody wants to put their name made by the so they'll put one chair and put by family foundation, this and all of that. But until we first throw away this self-glory, that is how we know that it's change we want in our community, then we can really support about that. And I love the other question, another way we can scale is, we don't have, Tolu, you talk about project. We should begin to think beyond project. If I have money, how do I put it in an organization that can sustain it? Not only come during Christmas and do a project and it ends like that. But we should begin to look long term. So how are people that are working in the community that we can do about? And so that's why I'm saying that sometimes, like people in diaspora, for example, you might have a lot of people in government. I know a couple of people you can call, but after that, beyond just calling those people, election will come, their 4 years will come, they will go. Again, the project gets stuck. So that is one of the things we need to do, sustainability. Then in the community model, I think is the best. When I was doing a project with UNDP, that's in 2007. It's a long time. So one of the projects that we saw, that made a project that we don't, if they want to build a school, we don't give the community all the money. So this is how we do it. So the community will bring people that will fetch water for the medicine during the school. They will be the one to cook, because the goal was they want them to know the value. Because if you build schools most times for some community, they don't use it. Yes, they allow it. They don't take ownership of it because they say it's free. They give them. So what that model did was, if you say you're building something for 250,000, okay, break it down. What and what do you want to use that 250,000 for? Oh, medicine will take this, water will take this, labor will take this. Okay, village chief, you have young people in this community, they can do this labor. So take out that money from the project. You have women, they can fetch water and come and put. When we come here, you give us goat and chicken. We want you to prepare that goat and chicken so that all the home medicine, people building the house, they will eat. The engineers will eat together. And trust me, we built that school. The day they were opening, they were celebrating because they felt it was them. So because we created it in a way that it was 50-50. So because we don't want to build an empty school and becomes empty. So after the building was made, the day of commissioning, they had chairs there and all of that. And we used that model enough in Benue. I can still speak proudly that up to now, all of those schools are still functioning. The payment of some of the teachers in some of those schools is between PTA and the little that government can support. So if government does not pay, at least you have PTA teachers that can support. So that's a model that people can use as continuous partnership with people, make them know people can contribute. But sometimes we say, oh, they don't have money, they are poor community, but they have different things they can offer. And like John was talking, Sanusi was saying in the event in the UK, in the US that you're talking about, that we can convert our churches, our mosques, and all of this into schools building that people can begin to do. But I mean, I don't want to put too much of pressure on the church, because I know that, yes, we blame the church for many things, we blame religious, but if we remove those people, there will be no Nigeria now. Because half of what's surviving Nigeria in some community, church is the one feeding the people now, giving them life, giving them all of that. So, but I know the church can do more. The church can do more. But with Maxwell, I've said there are models, people that are existing. How do we begin to do it? But finally, maybe just for me to wrap up on this particular question, is that diaspora first must organize themselves before they support. So churches, they will say support, but diaspora must organize. Even like Nigerian diaspora, let me say this, Nigerian diaspora, because if we go back, if we look at big diasporas like the Mexican diaspora, the Indian diaspora, all of those guys are so organized that first they even made a name for themselves in those places they are. So they have a union and they can really generate huge money. Because sometimes, again, beyond just helping this primary school, there's supposed to be economic background and backup. Like some of these children can do internship, they can get a job, or they can learn some of these transferable skills, read and write, and all of those mathematics. But I think for me, the take home from this call is that whoever is listening, ask yourself, what are you doing? Not just the diaspora. We should not put everything on diaspora. Even back at home in Nigeria, that little tutor you can volunteer to go and teach free lessons. You don't have to have money. You can say, okay, me, I don't have money. Now I'm not even working. I've not gotten a job. As you're applying and moving about, I know it's not easy. I say it's easier said than done, but some of us have done all of these things before. So that's why we can talk confidently on this call. Just take opportunity and say, okay, I will come and teach lesson 1 to 2, 2 to 12. And you see, it comes with blessings and it opens door. And so that's what we need to have volunteer spirit to begin to say, how do we support all of that? That's how we can scale. And so with BNI do a lot of this summer thing because, okay, BNI, how can you double it? Let's go back to the Boy Scouts, the Girls Guide, the Boys Brigade, the Red Cross. It's not just be people just go alone together and have meetings, but how do we make those platforms an educational platform and we can support them? Because some of them, they have good structure that if you send money from diaspora to them, they can account for the money. But not go and give the money through youth, Ministry of Youth or Ministry of this, or where I disappear. You won't see the money again. So you have to find the way you do it. Sorry for those that don't understand what I mean. I spoke in tongue.
That's okay. Thank you so much. I think that there's a lot to say. I'm glad we're having this conversation. Actually, when myself and Jen were talking about it, we're like, maybe this will start some conversations or even continue because I'm sure other people are talking about this. But more than that, we're open to also begin to maybe share some of these things with, far and wide as much as we can think through from different perspectives and start taking some actions also. So I'm really glad that we're having this conversation today, which I'm hoping will be a first of many, bringing in people to talk and not just to talk, but to talk for the purpose of helping people think through critically some of these things and seeing what change they can make. Because even from this meeting, we would put together like a brochure, like a report kind of thing to share some of these things and share to people that maybe somebody will take 1 or 2 things and run with it or collaborate with other people. So thank you so much for joining. The other thing we have, if we would just go briefly over it today, is that okay, yes, is that Great Mind. So I'm representing Great Mind Library, and what we do is that we build libraries in underserved areas of Nigeria because our goal is to improve literacy, education. Myself, I'm a result of a lot of reading. Like I didn't have so much opportunity to do some things that others had, but then I knew about them because I would read a lot, and I've seen a lot of impact of reading in my own life. So we came together to say, okay, identify communities that might need libraries, or maybe a school that has a library building that there's nothing in it. Get commitment from the school. Do you have someone who could actually man this library? Do you have a librarian? Maybe we can provide books, we can provide a shelf, and you promise us that you would actually be using these things. There's somebody that we can hold accountable. So we started doing that in some communities in Nigeria. We're a small and new organization. We're just about 3 years, but we've been able to create. So this was, it's a Texas-based nonprofit. So this was where we were putting together some books from over here. We had to buy some books also, and we did book drives and book sorting. We got some commitment from some schools who helped us provide books, because here in the US, a lot of times after the school year, the books are sometimes not used anymore. So they just give them out and all. So we were able to do that. And we also actually featured in one of the Nigerian Independence Day events. That was in 2019, where we're just starting, talk to people about our organization, and we had some time with some of the kids as well. So this was one of the first libraries that we helped to work on. Somewhere in Delta State, I can't remember the names now, but small changes, right? This was the primary school we did in 2019. This people who are actually leaders in the community who we involved came to help us start the library. And this was the secondary school we did the year after. And the interesting thing is that this library that we worked on, we did actually sow a seed, because we're also thinking about how do we involve the community. We have to let them know that it's just not just dropping these shelves and then we're running away. We got commitment with the community. And the interesting thing is that some of the leaders of this community actually shared this project with their alumni of some of the people who have gone through the schools. And they actually came down to say, oh, can we make this library into a UTME center for the students? So they're actually currently trying to revamp these shelves into a places that could actually have computers, that kids can come and learn computer, kids can come and take their exams there, because they didn't have a center in that community at that time. So small changes, but connecting with other people by what we did and then doing more and more. So it's not a one-man thing anymore. It's people coming together to make something happen. So during COVID-19 as well, one big thing we learned from this COVID-19 digital library is that access to internet in Nigeria is still very, very abysmally poor, especially for the kids that really, really need it in the underserved area. So it was a good project, but we learned a lot about why, we probably needed to take more time to develop something that would really work on the kids. But well, lesson learned. So we have some future goals, which is to begin to form these relationships, connect with the government in some way, build more libraries, more than libraries, see if we can revive some of the programs like the Jets Club, like the literary and debating societies, like things that would actually, because even when there's no money and there's no funds, some of these programs actually expose the mind of the kids that even though I'm in this situation right now, my mind is being developed. I can think critically. I can begin to imagine a brighter future, even without a lot of funds and resources available. So more than just the buildings and money, we're also looking to develop more programs and all that. So I'm glad some of us are working in this space. I'm very open to having conversations with us on how we can, give us some insight on how we can do better. So I think I should pass it on to John to speak about BNI.
And so maybe before you speak about BNI, I think maybe just throw it out there, because I know that you'll be shipping a lot of books to Nigeria. So the question would be that, is there anybody listening here that has connection? Because shipping books to Nigeria is huge money. So by other ways, you can have those partners, because I know that there are provisions within the law that they can give waivers to some of those kind of things that they know that it's not opportunity. So whoever is listening that can help that project, it's very important. But there's also other educational projects that are converting now to digital, because like most times people cannot go to physical library. So maybe try and connect you to them. I'll send you a couple of names, but they're not up, but I think and I also know some of them. And so maybe see how you partner with all of those other projects. But it's a big project, but there are a lot of people also working on mobile libraries and all of that. And so there are great people you can partner with. I just wanted to throw that out. That somebody also hears us, they can connect with you and help you. In terms of shipping all of those books from the US is hard, but there's a way around it.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for that. Yeah. I'd love to connect. Yeah. John.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so for BNI, we are basically a youth work organization, and our goal basically is to create platforms in the community for young people to be able to access the skills they need to thrive in life. Can you just go to the next slide? Okay. I'll focus on some of the work we do with teenagers, which is the age group we really focus on. We focus on children, teenagers, and young people through a lifespan development approach. But then, teenagers happen to be the age group we really kind of concentrate our efforts on. And this, in my woman development class Friday, we're talking about the class for that day was on adolescent development. And interestingly, this is the stage where learning happens, skills development. It is a very, very important phase of life that young people must definitely be able to get access to learning and skills development opportunities, because that is where it's very important for them to get exposed, strengthen their cognitive ability is very, very enhanced at that stage. They can learn better. So we have Teens Club, which we hold every Friday, and the focus is to once again provide them access to life skills development opportunities. They get to engage in, they learn. There was a time we are using the My Own Library by Great Minds Library to because some of them don't have access to computers at home, they don't have phones. Some of the phones that their parents use might not really be that sophisticated enough to access the library, but they come around to the center on Friday, and we kind of use that to assess, history. That was the time they were studying on. I think this picture, the first picture, was taken when they were studying about Egypt, the pyramid and all of that. So one of the ways that I think youth centers or having a community-based platform, one of the ways they can serve the place of digital learning is that for those that they may not have access to, maybe phones or laptops, they could use the resources available in those community youth centers to access some of those online libraries. Yeah. So aside our teens club, we also have we host this Build 18 outreach, and the goal of the Build 18 outreach, basically, we tend to provide resources for vulnerable children. Maybe that was when sometimes people have a lot of stuff that they don't use again, but could be useful for someone else, maybe clothes, textbooks, shoes, and things like that. We refurbish it and we package it for the outreach, right? And one of the things we also do with our outreach is that we try to use it as an opportunity to identify outstanding teenager or brilliant teenager in that community that may be needing help. Apparently, we've done this outreach we've implemented it in Agbo, Abadina, Ifaki, and also Ajibode. And I'll talk about one success story from the one we did in Agbo that is quite wonderful. I'll talk about that later. Then we host a summer academy, to our annual summer academy, which is one of the major programs of BNI. We've been doing that since 2017, and is an opportunity for them to learn, to acquire life skills, to get to okay. For example, people talk about extracurricular activities in school. One of the issue I have with extracurricular activities and the way sometimes it is being implemented in schools is that is implemented by teachers that probably do not have expertise in that area. For example, you have I used to say it. There was a time in my secondary school that the person teaching us French studied Yoruba in school. What's that person going to teach you? So and also there's a way students also approach extracurricular activities in schools as one of those free days, as if you went to boarding school, you understand what I'm saying. The day of extracurricular activities happens to be like, it's a free day. You don't have to be serious on this day. There's no test, there's no exam. That's the way you view it. And of course, it can be strengthened in school. But one of the things we realize is that when we use summer program as an opportunity, because this time around, they are not thinking about exam, they are not thinking about assignments, they are not thinking about tests. Their mind is focused. So if you can, although summer BNI summer academy is just for 2 weeks, but I wish we can do 4 weeks, right? And focus their mind on a particular skills. So what we do is every year we focus on a particular skill. So during for 2022, we focus on digital literacy, right? Digital literacy. Last year it was on performing arts, and it was quite wonderful. Last year we had B2V Nimbia, we had MC Lively, we had some of these people already in the performing arts, just kind of helping them gain confidence on engaging on stage. And so aside acquiring digital skills, one of the things they did this year was to produce a music as a way of campaigning against single use of plastic. That was the video that we played at the start of the broadcast. Then we're also working with Great Minds Library to implement library projects in schools. We're also working on doing that in BNI as well. But okay, this picture, I brought out this picture. This was what we did in probably 2016 in Ofiki. Yeah. So if you could see this small shelf here, that was what this school had as library, what they call library. And at that time, I think it was our campus, our UR campus network that did this project. And we saw that the government had constructed a classroom for them with chairs and table, but there was nothing, there was no place they could use as library. So we kind of got someone in the community to make shelves for them. I would fundraise, with crowd raised books. People donated books, that we supply to them, and set up one of the classroom as library. So you could see that the seat in the classroom is actually a classroom seat. So that was what they eventually used as library. And But the other thing we've seen with library projects is that, yes, books can be available in the library, but how are the kids using it for learning? So that was why we introduced the concept of assisted learning to the library project. Now, in terms of scalable impact, I will give three examples: Aisha, Simi, and Temilolu, and that will be where I'll be rounding up. We met Aisha during our outreach to Agbo. She was necessary at that time, and from there we enrolled her in the apprenticeship program where she learned baking and confectionaries. She joined BNI Teens Club, attended Life Path Summer Academy. Then through mentorship, she was able to get an admission to UI, and now she's a 300 level student in UI studying statistics, and she also won a baking outfits. Simi also was in SS1 in ISI when we met, she joined Teens Club. She has passion for writing. She was able to develop that through BNI Teens Club, and she has won good award for the Queen's Commonwealth Essay Competition. And also Temi Lolua, who also picked her passion for coding during through the BNI Teens Club and has now built a scientific calculator and games. Basically, I believe that through the impact we've seen with Aisha, Simi, and Temi, there's so much more we can do with the life of teenagers when we provide them access to these skills development opportunities in their community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. So this is the last part. We're actually working on a current project with between Great Minds and BNI as well. So we're looking at seeing the possibility of helping to build a library that will not just be a library for books alone, but also have a couple of computers that when the kids come in, they will be able to access the internet, they'll be able to browse, they'll be able to learn as well. And some of these programs will also be helped by having books and resources that can contribute to their learning process and computers as well. So we started the project this year. It's actually one of our major projects this year, and we are working on it right now. For anyone who is listening, we have the donation links up there. We have the updates on both BNI's website and social media. We have it on Great Minds Library social media. We'll put the link in the chat. For those that registered, we have your email addresses. We would send you some information. If you don't want us to contact you, you can decline, so we'll stop sending you. But we also share on social media as well. I would really love us to be able to do this project this year. We're thinking it will be somewhere in their center. We're looking at some of the options of places to put like a reading corner and then a couple of computers with desks and tables as well. So good conversation today.
So again, back that last one. Yeah, so I think to sustain a place with internet and all of this, let's begin to think, how do we partner with these AirTech companies so that they can, if it's been that every 3 months, AirTech supplies, on that 3 months, MTN takes care of the internet. So I think we should include that as a plan. That's how we can sustain it, because I know internet, especially in our own country, it's huge. It's huge money. And to power that library, we'll meet them. I know MTN Foundation has such thing they do a lot they've done a lot in many schools in the East and all of that, and so they can support. So MTN Foundation can be a place to look at, and if there's anybody on MTN Foundation that's stumbled on this video, we're challenging you to come and support this project. And
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We appreciate all the input. I personally, and on behalf of Great Minds and BNI, we're thanking our panelists, Benga Oni, Ayontola Alayande, John Oluwadero, Eunice Oladeji. We appreciate.
John is a host.
Yeah, I know.
I'm joking. I'm joking. But you should thank yourself too. Tolu, thank yourself. That's a new way I do. I
thank myself for showing up. And I would really love to continue this conversation because
we'll catch up offline.
Yeah.
So I work in healthcare, but my passion is for children, child development, education. Through my personal development, working with non-profits, I really want to do this for a long time.
You're in the right place. Yeah. Healthcare and education is not separated, because if people don't have good health, they can't have education. So you see, food, healthcare, and education. Food and healthcare, they are foundation that is needed for a good education. So your mind is in the right place. So you're doing the right thing. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Everybody that joined from Facebook, from YouTube, our speakers that joined. There's so many comments that have been made. We'll put them together. For anyone who wants to contribute your ideas, you are highly welcome. We have a link. We'll still share this video as a replay on all the social media platforms we have access to. We'll put a survey link where you can give us your email address and any answers to these questions so we can continue to consolidate these thoughts for an actionable plans as well. So any last comments from our two remaining panelists before we
Yeah, so for me, I think it's thank you to everybody for listening and all of that, but also doing that, we're going to point resources. Like we said, yes, it's a challenge to all of us that have listened. Just think of one thing you can do. It might not be all of this project we have mentioned, but look in your neighborhood, everywhere around, how can you support something? And finally, I think there's a research that we talk about when you talked about weak care problem. I was laughing because we did a very big research using that Harvard model when I was doing that program with Harvard around Nigerian education. And I think it's extensive, although it looks to be more of higher education and high school, but it's adaptable, different model or how different people can. So I'm willing to share it with you. So as you're making this final report up to that, you can incorporate that into it. But thank you for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to talk about our dear country, Nigeria, but not just that. And I know that you and John, you're doing great and great job. Yes, I'll share the name of those foundations with you, and you can others see the work too they're doing and see how we can all collaborate. But we are doing our best, and our country will work by the grace of Almighty God. Yeah.
Amen. I believe that. Yeah. Thank you, John.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. I mean, it's so funny that God is all planned out in less than 7 days. It's so funny. Thank you so much, everyone that has been joining us online. We really appreciate you. We also want you to keep in touch. You can always reach either Tolu or myself and to continue conversation on this project. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I think at this point, we are bringing this talk to an end. Have a good rest of the weekend and happy Independence Day, Nigeria.
Happy Independence Day, Nigeria. Bye-bye. Yes. God bless Nigeria. Bye.
Bye.